Welcome to the Voice for Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
Hello, this is Roger Gaither, your host for the Voice for Mount Pleasant podcast. Today, the publisher of Mount Pleasant Magazine, Bill Maschio, is talking with the mayor of Mount Pleasant, Will Haynie. And now, here's Bill and Will.
I am so honored today, everyone. We're here with Will Haynie. He is the mayor for Mount Pleasant, and I'm just honored you're here, and I appreciate it very much, Will. I know you're a dog person, aren't you?
Big time.
Yeah. What do you got? What's the name of your pup?
Well, my pup is Rusty. He's a rescue through Palmetto Paws. He is the most amazing dog. I'm not saying the best because I've had great ones. The most amazing dog because he is a mixed breed. And we didn't know what we were getting. We just knew he looked cute and smart, and he was tiny when we got him. He's 7 now.
Okay.
Here's what I figured out. I have been a purebred dog owner all my life, purebred shepherds. I tend towards the shepherds. When you get a mutt, it's like getting a smartphone that has a whole bunch of apps on it.
That's funny.
We did his DNA test, and we found out he's part Border Collie, and you know how smart they are. He's part Russell Terrier, not the little Jack, but the big Russell Terrier. So he's got intense energy and this intense drive. He's part probably Coyote, up to 25%.
Really?
And he's part Boxer and part Staffordshire or Pit Bull, whatever that is. And there's nothing he doesn't do. He herds, he retrieves, he swims. He fetches, he just does everything.
That's great. Listen to you. You love him to death.
All these little apps running.
Yeah, that's cool. For those that don't know, Suzette is a teacher at what school again?
She's at Jenny Moore, 5th grade.
Yeah, Jenny Moore. So what did you and Suzette do to keep yourself safe? What did you do as a person?
Wow. And thinking back to March, that seems like years ago now, but remember one of the slower things to happen going back to March was for the schools to close. And we were very concerned that week after states of emergency were issued, but yet schools had not been told to close. The first thing we did, and my dad's a retired physician, and this stuff is right up his alley. He was calling, emailing, and everything, and talking about, simple precautions, wipe your hands, don't touch your face, all this kind of stuff. At that time in March, remember the mask issue was not what it is today. But the main thing we did was we stayed home. I remember, I think it was 3 weeks that I didn't even leave my home.
Wow.
I had to go to the town. Sometimes I had to go sign something. But I didn't go anywhere for 3 weeks. And
so let me ask you something about, this is maybe a question for Suzette, but what has she heard about schools going back and everything, Will?
They've heard some preliminary things. They may be an A-B thing. Parents have been given the choice of keeping their children out. Nobody knows if they have children in the classroom and children learning remotely, they're not sure who's going to be doing the teaching. It's a big question mark right now.
When we get in the thick of this and you're having to make decisions and the town's having to make decisions, how many special town council meetings did you have since the 1st of March?
We had our regular March meeting on the second Tuesday of March, and then we had an emergency meeting, which would have probably been the following Monday. I think that was, I'm guessing, the 15th, because I will always remember it's a scrapbook moment in my head, signing a declared civil emergency for the town of Mount Pleasant on the 16th of March.
Okay.
Which at the time we thought that emergency would last 2 weeks. It was for 2 weeks. And here we are at the end of June. Now, we are not still under that civil emergency. That's an extreme measure. But then we had probably 2 more during March, and I think we had 1 in April. So I think we've had 4 or 5 emergency council meetings during all of that.
And which one of those really, between the first one in March, your regular one, till the one that was yesterday, yeah. What has been the most difficult one of all of them, Will?
I thought at first, Bill, that it would have been the first emergency meeting that we had where council voted down a non-binding resolution to urge the governor to do a stay-at-home order, which he did about a week later. I thought that was the hardest one, but I'm going to say the last one that we just did on Monday, where we did pass a mask ordinance, and not so much that the topic was any harder, but everybody is tired. We are all stressed. We are all tired. I know I'm at the end of, I have reached several times the end of my physical limit and just had to kind of rest for a couple of days. I think we've all reached that, what the psychologists call decision fatigue. And so I think some tempers and nerves were a little strained when we met on Monday, and that's regrettable, but you know what? That's reality too.
So you had a 6-2 vote to wear masks in the town of Mount Pleasant. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. With that in mind, can you tell our viewers what will happen if somebody doesn't have a mask?
What will happen?
Yeah, if somebody, can a police officer stop somebody in
civil? It's a civil thing.
Okay.
It is not a criminal thing.
Okay.
But, that having been said, because under Carl Ritchie, as you've seen with a lot of things, our police are all about improving life in Mount Pleasant.
I agree.
And he has taught me there's a big difference between public service and public safety and law enforcement. And my guess is that all of our town staff, and I think Eric DeMora has a tremendous staff that he has built as our town administrator, which you all chronicled, his work and everything in a recent edition. I think what will happen is that just like with cigarettes smoking, the no smoking, just like with shirts and shoes, once you pass an ordinance, whether you're writing tickets or not, the public realizes this is serious business. And it does have the force of law behind it, which it should. But people will be admonished. But the best thing is, Bill, as I said in the media, and I said in that meeting, it is not the government closing businesses right now. It is the virus closing businesses right now. Look at the who's who list of Mount Pleasant restaurants and bars that have closed. I mean, just this week on Coleman Boulevard alone, Arts and Pages have had to close down.
Yes.
That is sad. So what it does is it also gives business owners the backing of the town, so that they can say, I am sorry, due to an emergency ordinance, I cannot, allow you to not have a mask in this establishment if it's one that falls under the thing. And that's big. That's giving businesses a tool to make their workplace a more safe place. And
they're protecting their customers by wearing a mask. So it's something, one of the things, Will, that I've found fascinating is even though it's a terrible thing what's going on, we are all on the same page for the most part. My other question, I've got a couple, of course, but what was it like, Will, managing a town during the pandemic? What's it like?
It's the hardest challenge. I mean, we've all had family challenges. We've all had family illnesses. We've had the loss of family members, and nothing compares, to dealing with unexpected things or emergencies with those closest to you that you love. But in terms of feeling the weight of responsibility and decision-making, Bill, this is the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. And I've had lots of ups and downs in my life. And I'm somewhat of a survivor and an overcomer. But I have never felt the weight of responsibility more than I have in this situation. And I think all elected officials, I'm not unique, and it's not just because I'm mayor. I think all council members and elected officials would say the same thing, because this was not like a hurricane. We can pull the hurricane plan out like this, and everybody knows what to do and what benchmarks are. There was no template for this.
That's exactly right. Plus, when the hurricane comes through, it's gone. But we have an article in the next issue of Mount Pleasant Magazine. We have an interview with Helen Hill, and she did have something to say. And she, matter of fact, it's a great article. Ann Toole did it. One of her comments was, after the hurricane left, they had to rebuild. Okay, and after this leaves, at least we don't have buildings to rebuild, and at least we don't. So hopefully that I thought that was a very positive thing to look at, because everybody that's been through Hugo compares this, what we're going through to Hugo, and there's, as you said, there's no real comparison. What's the most difficult when you look at the town as a whole? What do you think the most difficult obstacle that we've had in our town during this time?
The most difficult obstacle has been from me with council, and council with the people, and the people with each other. all of our structure, all of our decision-making infrastructure, and all of our social infrastructure is trying to do what you were just talking about, keep everybody on the same page and fighting this virus together, because as we have seen and we saw with this emergency meeting this week on the topic of our mask, is people fighting each other. That has been very hard. And that has been hard. The other thing that I will say was really hard, and somebody, a very wise person told me, said, if you think that going into the protective things back in March and April was hard, said, wait till you start coming out. And I think now everybody realizes by conventional wisdom, when you see where South Carolina is now, we collectively came out too soon. We came out before we had 14 days of reduced numbers. Now here we are at the end of June going into the 4th of July weekend, and we are the people that other states are warning their people about, and that is sad. So that was a very difficult thing about what to open when, how soon, and it was not easy. I think the governor did the best job he could. The one thing that I told him when he and I discussed it was, I get it that what's happening in Charleston, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston may be very different than what's happening in Oconee County or Allendale County, and I get it. So that if you say statewide mask order, or you say statewide closing of restaurants or bars, I totally get that there is a difference there. So one of the things I asked the governor for early, and we're getting this now about the mask. He says, I'm not going to do a mask ordinance, but I'm not going to stop y'all if y'all want to do one municipally, and we've already done that. So, Bill, this has just been a dance of the uncertain, a dance of the unknown. And I will tell anybody, I told a council member the other day who was very upset with me, I haven't been right on everything. I haven't handled everything perfectly or even that great, but I really have given it my all and done the best I can.
And that's all we can ask of anybody, no matter what position that they're in. It's kind of hard when you look at everything to think that people don't see what's going on because it's duplicated in other areas. In your opinion, did Columbia work well with the municipalities?
Yeah, I will say they did. I think they worked very well. And what we did here going back to March and April was our county council chairman, Elliott Summey, would get on the phone. He got on the phone in manageable size groups with Charleston, North Charleston, and Mount Pleasant about some of the big issues like hotels, short-term rentals, and all that. And then he got on the phone with the island municipalities as the issues came up about the barricades and those type things, and tried to keep everybody on the same page. And then we let our county speak to the state more for us. And this is when the phones were ringing all the time. Since then, the governor makes spot calls, and he's called me. And I talked to Mayor Tecklenburg this morning. He had called Mayor Tecklenburg this morning. What we're concerned about right now is the lack of social distancing in bars. And we're getting indications, even medically, that the bar scene is becoming a super spreader concentration of the virus. So we need the state to maybe address that. But,
do you feel that's going to happen?
No, not necessarily. I think it might. I think there's a chance that it will. It won't be a shutdown, but I think the state might come out and do some stronger limits on occupancy capacity kind of thing.
Right. But certainly, I think the uncertainty, you mentioned it early on, I think that's the biggest thing. And not to keep talking about hurricanes, but there's a certain uncertainty we have with a hurricane. This is so uncertain that I hope what is the biggest lesson that the towns learned from this? Because, we do walk away from experiences learning something. And so what do you think we've learned as a town?
Are you talking about the townspeople, or are you talking about the town government, or both?
Well, I want to go to the town people first, and then I'd like to drill down to the government. So what are the citizens? What do you think, from you listening to people in our community and from listening to people talk and the questions that you get that no one else does, what do you think we've learned as a community?
I think the first thing we have learned, and it sounds cliched, is how quickly and drastically life can change without any warning. Think about the conversations we were having in January and February. Nothing to do with any of this.
Right.
Who would have thought that so many jobs would be lost, so many people would be on unemployment? So I think we've learned one thing, and I'll use a catch-all term, is resiliency. That we need to plan, whether it's cash flow, whether it's business models, whether it's relationships, whether it's communication models, that we have got to have a more resilient infrastructure. And I mean that like you and I talking, that's part of our social infrastructure right there. And I'll say to the town, we are one of the best because of our staff, not because of the mayor, but because of the staff. They have very, very good emergency skills. We have a trained professional emergency coordinator who is fantastic. Amanda Knight is her name. And Eric DeMoore.
She's done a good job. Amanda's done a good job.
But this was new for everybody, keeping amounts of PPE, keeping supplies of all the things you need when you have what they're now talking about is a overall health care resiliency for everybody, governments, businesses, and institutions. That was on a Zoom cast I was on previously today, is looking down the road. Never waste a lesson learned in something like this and apply it to the future.
I think when we go through things like this, and of course none of us have gone through exactly that, I think you have to make your decisions not based on how it's going to affect you tomorrow, because it's so easy to do. You have to make decisions even during these times of what's going to happen, how it's going to affect you a year from now or months from now. And it's easy when you're in a crisis to make the quick decision because it's simpler then. I think you've done a great job. I think that the town as a whole has really pulled together. Do you not see that? Give us an example. Give the audience an example how you've seen us pull together.
I would say the very first thing, and the place I knew, the place I knew that we were going to be okay as a town is when the restaurants had to shut down, and the outpouring of support that the Mount Pleasant people gave to get takeout from their restaurants to help save jobs, to help keep these businesses going. That was the first thing that I saw.
That's great.
It was Mount Pleasant people that started the Feed Our Heroes, where you used a gift certificate or you went online and bought food, and they delivered it to the frontline workers in healthcare who were working. And that was March or April. It's worse now. Roper system had a 65% increase in hospitalized patients in one day, and that was yesterday. So this is still going.
Oh, yeah.
It was Mount Pleasant and Mount Pleasant people, Bill, and I told somebody I could not be more proud to be an elected official anywhere or any place. There's nowhere else I would rather be than right here in Mount Pleasant.
I agree. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Hey, you said that you really enjoyed the last issue of Mount Pleasant Magazine with the mask on the front. Tell me why you enjoyed it. Why do you enjoy that issue? Well,
you got such a grasp on it, and I think you're a pro who did this when Hugo hit over 30 years ago, so you know how to capture the event, and not only the dynamics that were in there, but the timeline that you have. I was telling you before we did the cast here that the podcast, that I decided the second week of this that I better keep a notebook and keep a journal. Every phone call, every text, every topic, because there was so much information coming at me. I'm trying to think, okay, was this, who was this conversation with? What was decided? What was the info? And I've got all the numbers. It's hundreds of pages, Bill. It's a notebook about that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to make that announcement we talked about before. For those that are watching, I asked our mayor if he would be so inclined, because for those that don't know, he's a journalist. That's one of the traits, and that's one of his crafts. And so Will has agreed, our mayor has agreed to do in the next issue of Mount Pleasant Magazine, which will be the September-October edition, he's going to do a lengthy article about what it's like to manage a town during a pandemic. So and I appreciate that, Will. There'll be a lot of people out there wanting to wanting to read that. In closing, I want to just ask you if you had anything you'd like to communicate. I mean, what I still want to hear what the takeaway is for this. What is the takeaway? The real takeaway for the town administration, for the workers there. What is that takeaway?
The real takeaway is almost cliched, is that we are better together and we work together. We're all together in this. I saw an illustration yesterday that somebody put on. There's a lot of junk out there, but this was really good. It said, imagine if you had a pack of glitter and you walked around town with glitter all day. Think about how many people are going to have glitter on them by the end of the day. And that's what this is like, dealing with the virus that's so small you cannot see it on an optical microscope. So everything we do affects each other. Every careless act, every careless disregard of all the protocols we've been given, and we have learned that we have to work together. In for people, I've seen people helping other people's businesses, delivering meals. Look at the number of meals that have been delivered to our town staff, police, fire, public services who are out there on the front lines. Don't forget, our folks that pick up the garbage every day, they are just as much at risk with all the surfaces and everything they touch. So we've got a lot of unsung heroes out there. But this town, the town of Mount Pleasant, our people stepped up and said, you're our heroes, and we appreciate what you're doing. And I just couldn't, I get a lump in my throat thinking about it, Bill.
So, Mayor, I haven't felt comfortable asking anybody in my staff to do some of the distribution in the grocery stores. So I personally have been the ones doing it. And I've got to tell you, I've been talking to some of the grocery store workers are like heroes too, you know. And I was talking to one of the guys at a Publix up there in Park West, and because I was listening as I was distributing magazines to his interaction with the customer base there, and it was so polite, so congenial. People were coming in and just so I asked him when nobody was in front of him. I asked him, I said, "Are people nice like that all the time?" He says, another vendor came in just the other day, and we were talking about that. And the main thing is for all of us, Mayor, is to capture the thoughts and the emotions we have now and bottle them inside our hearts and soul, and make sure that a month from now, 10 months from now, when we don't have the same thing to deal with, we still remember those kind words we heard or those kind words we said. I think it's so important, you know? So check this out, Mayor. This is so we got a mask here. So anybody isn't that cool, dude? You like that?
You got to get me one.
Yeah, for sure. Mayor, thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to publishing your memoirs, if you would, about going through this effort. And again, I know you're really busy, and I appreciate you joining us here on Voice for Mount Pleasant.
It's my pleasure. And thank you, Bill, for the way that you and your publications capture the heart and soul of our community, and that means a lot.
Well, I appreciate it, Mayor. Thanks a lot very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your time with the Voice for Mount Pleasant podcast by Mount Pleasant Magazine. Your community, your podcast. Listen to past episodes at voiceformp.com.